What's going on, everybody? It's Justin Harder here with Newnan News and Business Reviews. Today I have the opportunity to interview Russell Lingerfelt, who is a best-selling author, and he's written the book, The Mason Jar. He just recently moved to Newnan, met a girl, fell in love with her. So we're about to go over to the cookie bar, and you're gonna have an opportunity to meet him in person. So let's go over there and check it out.
This episode of Faces and Places is brought to you by the Cookie Bar, where they make freshly baked cookies every single day. If you want to try some of the most amazingly delicious cookies that Newnan, Georgia has to offer, stop by the Cookie Bar and check them out. I guarantee that you'll love their cookies.
Thanks for being on the show today. I appreciate it. To start off with, tell me about your transition to Newnan. You just recently moved to Newnan, is that right?
I did, just a few months ago. My best friend married this girl's best friend, and we met at the wedding. She grew up in Newnan, and we met probably around 2014, and we've been dating, and I moved over about 3 or 4 months ago.
What do you think about Newnan so far?
I love it. It's a great fit for me because I love the downtown, and if you ever want to get away from the town, all you have to do is drive less than 3 miles away, and you're with the cows and the horses. And that's how I grew up. I grew up on a Black Angus cattle farm.
Yeah.
So I love the country, and I love the people. It's for me, at this place in my life, it's a great place to be.
Awesome.
I also love the fact that we're just 45 minutes away, or less than 45 minutes away, from an international airport. So, you know, we can get to Beijing in less than 24 hours. Wow. We can get to Rome. We can get direct flights into Rome, Italy. So I'm all about it. Let's go.
Speaking of airports, I know you're a traveler and you've been to multiple countries. Yeah. Tell us about some of the travels you've had. How many countries have you visited?
I've been to over 20 countries. I spent a lot of my young professional summers when I was a professor, and I spent my college summers traveling to other countries, just doing internships and volunteer work, and it was a wonderful experience. I got to go to North Africa. I spent a summer in North Africa. I spent a summer in East Africa, and I spent a summer in the Middle East, and they were wonderful experiences.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, good deal. Well, I know that you're a best-selling author, which is pretty cool. And you wrote this book, The Mason Jar. Okay. What inspired you to become a writer?
Probably ever since I was a little kid, I liked listening to stories and telling stories. And when I was in the 3rd grade, our teacher gave us, in English class, they gave us an assignment to write a story. So I wrote it, and the teacher liked it so much that she made me get up and read it in front of the class, and I was in the 3rd grade. And I remember being the only... No, I loved it. I wasn't nervous at all. But what it was funny was I was the only one that was chosen to read their story. Yeah. And we actually ended up taking the stories that we wrote, and we created kind of like a cardstock Elmer's glue book out of it. And I still have it at home. I might be able to give it to you for some B-roll. But that happened, and then I started keeping a journal when I was 15. And by my late 20s, I'd filled up like 5 different 3-ring binders of just journal entries, just writing about these wonderful experiences I was having in the other countries, writing about my experiences of growing up. You know, whenever you're young, most of the things that you encounter are new, and they're fresh, and they're exciting. And I had an elderly man tell me that if I would write about my life in my younger years, when I became an elderly man, they would mean a lot to me to have. I could give them to my kids, my grandkids, and I took him up on his advice, and I'm really glad I did it. So.
Right. But I was actually reading the summary of your book, which is very interesting. And a lot of what's in the book kind of seems like it applies to your own life. If you could just tell us the summary about this book.
I heard, I can't remember who said it, but it was an author, and he said, if you want to know what someone knows, read their nonfiction. But if you want to see their heart, read their fiction. And I never forgot that. And I was always really keen on, I wanted to write something that people wouldn't be afraid to let their kids read. So I wanted the novels that I write to be family friendly. And one of the things that I just have a natural knack for is writing a story about a guy on a journey who meets a girl, and he decides to change course and pursue her instead. But like most love stories, when you have a story that has a strong romantic slant, even after he pursues her, something happens that keeps them apart. And then the rest of the story is, what does he have to do? What battles does he have to face in order to win her over? Whether it's himself that's getting in the way, herself that's getting in the way, her family, circumstances, political events could get in the way. And so wars. And if you predate the story before the 1994, predating the internet, it helps really with a lot of the conflict, because you can't just pick up your cell phone and text her or call her, or you can't send her a Facebook message or an email. Right. So if you can predate a story before 1994, you can actually create some pretty good love stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess technology has kind of screwed it up nowadays.
Well, I wouldn't say it screwed it up. It's made it easier for us to communicate. But if you want to tell a great epic story, and what I mean by epic is a hero goes on a journey. That's what epic means. A hero goes on a journey, or a stranger comes into town. And I remember it may have been Dostoevsky, one of the Russian writers, who said there's only two stories in the world. A hero goes on a journey, or a stranger comes into town. And that's every story you could possibly write. And so in my stories, the hero goes on a journey, but he meets a girl along the way, and he decides to pursue her instead. But things get in the way. Right when we think that they're going to get together, something happens.
There's always some type of
time, distance, some kind of, maybe even a political event, a war gets in the way. Maybe it's his own self-conflict. Maybe it's her own self-conflict. An old boyfriend from her life shows up. Yeah. An old girlfriend from his life shows up. So you just, you kind of figure out what kind of story you want to tell, and you chart it out, and you just start writing, and that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. So speaking of writing, you've worked in the film industry, writing screenplays and doing that sort of thing. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience in the film industry?
Yeah. So I think it was in 2012, I was actually a professor at Lipscomb University in Nashville. But I found my heart on Saturdays and Sundays, my mind would wander to storytelling. And when I was around the year 2001, I was about 21 years old. I got on Dawson's Creek in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's just a college kid. Me and some friends, we went out there and we got on the television show. And a couple of years later, I got on Tim Burton's Big Fish that was being shot in Montgomery, because I was going to college at Auburn. Well, I remembered how much fun I had on the film sets. And I went to grad school at Pepperdine University in California, and all of my friends were connected to the film industry in some way. So one of my internship projects is when I went to East Africa, we were working with street kids in a street children rehabilitation program, where they were taking the kids off the streets, taking them to a farm, letting them go to school, letting them sleep in a safe place, good nourishing food, and they would teach them life skills training, like job skills training, like mechanic, a barber, a cook, and then they would reintroduce them into Nairobi when they turned 17, and they would help them get jobs. And a lot of times these street kids would become more successful than people who didn't grow up on the streets. And so I took a video camera and I just documented the process. And when I got back to Pepperdine for my last year of grad school, I submitted it to the theology department, and I won the Lilly Endowment for the documentary. And then they gave me, I think, $2,500 to go to another third world country and do another project. So it was a wonderful experience, to be a boy from a small town in Alabama that did a documentary in East Africa while going to grad school in California and got awarded the Lilly Endowment. That was a huge honor for me.
Really?
That's awesome. That was a huge honor.
Okay, so, and you've also written some screenplays. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Sure.
So during my film internship in Nashville, and I kind of got sidetracked, but when I was doing my film internship, what happened was when I was serving as the professor, on the weekends I would work on film sets in Nashville, and I did a film internship. And that film internship taught me directing, producing, screenwriting, editing, all that stuff. And so I wrote a screenplay to go along with The Mason Jar, the novel. I became friends with a director. He now he's in Hollywood, but at the time he was just doing music videos and commercials. And his name was Brent McCorkle, and he was really involved in this most recent movie called I Can Only Imagine, which was shot in Oklahoma, I think. Brent was a huge part of that movie. But when I knew him in Nashville, he had recommended a handful of screenwriting books. I ended up reading 12 different screenwriting books, and that helped me write the Mason Jar screenplay. And they were having this big contest in Studio City. It was hosted by a company called Nasser Entertainment, and they're doing a lot of Ray Liotta movies, like less than $15 million budget movies. And they had this big screenwriting contest, and I heard about it. It was free to enter. I submitted my screenplay, and I won first place. And when I talked to them on the phone, they said, you beat out USC and UCLA students that had bachelor degrees in filmmaking. They said, you beat them out. And I was proud of that, you know. And, you know, we're sitting here, we're talking about great things that I've accomplished, but I've had a lot of failures too. And you'll hear a lot of people say, for every one thing that I'm proud of, for every one successful thing, there's been about 9 or 10 things that didn't work out. And that's very true. You know, I'm not a professor anymore, and I dedicated my entire college career to education and being a professor. I'm not even doing that anymore. My bachelor's degree was actually family counseling, and I was going to go be a marriage and family counselor. I ended up not doing that. I ended up changing roles. And so
Funny how we think we're going to do a certain thing, and then our life just takes a turn, and then we end up doing something completely different.
Yeah, but we can still be happy.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes is, sometimes we have to let go of old dreams in order to embrace new ones.
Right.
Like if you had told me 10 years ago that I would be living in Newnan, Georgia, that I'd be dating a great girl, that I would be a firm that recruited me from Alabama,
Yeah.
I would wonder, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Like, if you told me that, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah.
Because I was going to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I was going to do. And what I love about Newnan is they're making movies here.
Yeah.
And they're making movies in Fayette, and they're making movies they're making the television show Walking Dead in Sonoya. And I'm having conversations with other filmmakers, and they're trying to get me to get involved. And I love that. And I'm like, not yet.
Who knows? Maybe we'll shoot a movie coming up.
Yeah, you never know. Hey, we might even shoot a mini documentary interview at the Cookie Bar.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, Russell, to participate in this quick interview. To kind of wrap things up here, if you could give a piece of advice to somebody that's inspiring to become a writer, what would you tell that person?
What I would do is I would chart out, just on one page, what we call story beats. What your character is going to do, where they're from. Think of all the different emotions your character can go through, and be thinking about, what do I need to put my characters through for me to see all of these different emotions in them. Chart out your story on paper. Then go read 5 to 6 novels and watch a handful of movies that are telling a story similar to the one that you want to tell, and add that, get inspiration from it. I wouldn't steal it, but I would get inspiration from it.
Right.
And put that into that 1 to 2 page beat sheet, is what they call it.
Yeah.
And then just sit down, even if it's just 50, you'll be surprised at how much you can write if you just dedicate 15 minutes a day and just crank it out. Like, crank out that first draft. Just crank it out and let it sit. I would let it sit for a couple of weeks, and then I would go and I would write a second draft. Then let it sit for a while if you want to, or let some of your close family and friends read it. Crank out a third draft. And writing is really just about just showing up and doing it. It's just like anything in life.
Yeah.
Just show up and put in the work.
Yeah.
But that 1 to 2 page beat sheet of where you want your main character to go and see, experience, the people that you want your main character to encounter, I would really spend some time on just creating a 1 to 2 page document on charting out your main character's journey.
Awesome.
and go from there.
Well, thanks again, Russell, for your time, and thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode.